Red sky is one of the most beautiful weather phenomena, isn't it? You could have luck that you get red sky for a photograph, but there is also a simple method to predict red sky by yourself before you go to your photo spot. And in this video I will tell you exactly how to get sure to get red sky and also what you have to consider at your photography for your planning, but also out on location. But first of all, let's go out and shoot a red sky. My friends, a very good morning. We have fantastic weather today. We get a 100% chance for getting red sky, and I will tell you later a little bit more about how to predict red sky. What is really quite easy, by the way. And I came here to a fantastic little pond, and the idea is to photograph a fantastic mountain range in the distance and the reflection of it. Maybe, I'm not sure about that to be honest, because when we look back there, I'm not sure if you can see that, we have shrouds of mist here, and yeah, I think it's not all too bad. I think it could work maybe, and they have a little bit of a morning mood here at this pond, so I'm really quite happy about that. Let's have a look what's possible here. It's really fantastic. I'm already here and the red sky starts already, so when you look back there we see subtle reds, pastel reds in the distance, and it will get much more later, it will get much saturated. And I'm here with two cameras, to be honest. So here I'm with my Sony A7 IV at around about 26 millimeters, something like that, and here I'm with my Sony A6500 at around about 90 millimeters or 80 millimeters, something like that. I mentioned this already in one of my last videos. When I want to photograph red sky, it's a good idea to have anything in the foreground, any pond or any river or anything like that that reflects the red sky, and either you are quite close to the mountains you want to photograph, if there are mountains you want to photograph, whatever it is, that you get textures everywhere in the mountains. I don't think about all too many textures here, to be honest. I think more to get these amazing silhouettes of these mountains. We have a tiny bit of shrouds of mist here, a tiny bit hut back there. This looks also really fantastic. All the trees back there, these bleak trees, and this amazing red sky up there. It's really fantastic, and it's already over. We have just a tiny bit of reds back there in the distance, and also this little bit of mist, what's really adding here to this composition. So I will go back now to my office and I will tell you a little bit more about how to predict red sky and also some tips about red sky photography. What an amazing morning. The conditions were just fantastic. And I have already printed one of my images and I'm really happy about this one. And the thing is, it is not all about capturing the weather phenomenon, the red sky. The composition is quite important as well. what I really like here is these ripples here at the surface of the water at the right bottom corner. They lead us into the frame, and with this diagonal here back to the vanishing point to this amazing glowing red sky. And I also considered balance here with the everywhere in the image, and also the fog, what goes up here, and the clouds balancing everything. I'm really happy about this here. And the biggest problem with red sky photography is actually time. You know, it lasts just for a few minutes and all the magic in the sky is over. And yeah, it's really difficult that you get all your elements there where it adds to your composition, because you don't have all too much time there to think about things like that on location. So to get a masterpiece, planning is definitely the most important thing for red sky photography. And before I will tell you how to plan red sky, let's have a look what red sky is actually, or why it turns to red finally. And this makes it much easier for you to understand what we need to plan. Well, it is all about the light, obviously, sunlight. And you know, basically, the sunlight doesn't have a color. It is just white. It looks yellow, but it is white. We'll talk about in a minute why. So when the white sunlight shines onto our planet, it breaks through our atmosphere, and all the particles in our atmosphere filter the spectral colors of the sunlight in different strands. The blue part of the light is scattered into all directions, for instance, and this is the reason why the sky is blue, by the way. And this is also the reason why the sun looks yellow during the day. Red is the color that is at least filtered. So now we know that the atmosphere filters the colors. And now guess, what would happen if we would have a thicker layer of atmosphere? And you guessed it already, it would filter even more. The light would turn orange and finally red. So in this case here, it is noon and the sunlight has to pass just a short distance through the atmosphere. There isn't all too much scattered. And in this case here, the sun is low and the sunlight has to pass a quite long distance through the atmosphere. And more light gets filtered, and ultimately the light turns red. Because blue and green got filtered more than red. And this happens at sunrise and sunset. But this explains just the fact why the light gets red. It doesn't explain why the sky turns red. And you know, whenever we want to paint, we need any kind of canvas or paper or whatever. And for the red sky, the clouds are our canvas. When red light illuminates the clouds turn red. And this is why we definitely need clouds for red sky, but the right ones and at the right time, at the right place. Just quickly, there exist different types of clouds, and I will hold these as simple as possible, just what we need for landscape photography. Well, basically there exist two different types of clouds, and the difference is how they are built. So cumulus clouds are built when the air rises by itself. This usually happens when we have low pressure weather. There's simply no pressure given from above and the air can rise up. And the higher they go, the colder it gets. And the colder it gets, the more the air gets compressed. And this leads to a higher relative humidity. I mean, it is logical. When the amount of water in the air is constant and the air gets more compressed, the space between the water particles gets less and ultimately a cloud gets built. You know, cumulus clouds are these fluffy clouds, and in most cases it is easy to determine single clouds of them. So when you look up at the sky and you see single clouds there, the chance is quite high that these clouds are cumulus clouds. And very important is, cumulus clouds don't have all too much area at the bottom of them. So this is really important, and we will talk about later why this is important for our red sky prediction. Let's have a look first at the second type of clouds first. Well, cumulus clouds are built when the air rises up by itself. But now think what would happen if you would have a nice mountain and the air would blow from the side to the mountain face, a wind obviously, and you guessed it already, the air is blown up by the wind. And this could also happen when two winds crash together, by the way. However, the air gets blown up and there are clouds built quite fast. Again, because it's colder up there. But these clouds look different to single cumulus clouds, and they are called layer clouds, because they are blown up that fast. And this means the whole sky, or at least a bigger area, is covered by clouds. The area at the bottom layer of the clouds is amazingly big, and we can't determine single clouds easily. The whole sky or a part of it is covered. So narrow but high cumulus clouds in the one hand and more overcast sky in the other hand. And what we need for red sky is layer clouds. I mean, it could also work with cumulus clouds too, but it is more complicated and the chance is lower that it will work in the end. So I would go for layer clouds. This is much easier. And when we look at the weather maps, this is how layer clouds look there. It is a big area with clouds. And now it gets interesting. When we have layer clouds some minutes before sunrise or some minutes after sunset, there happens something with the clouds. So, you know, our planet is a sphere. Yeah, surprise, surprise. And let's imagine that we want to photograph a nice mountain and there are clouds above the mountain. This is important. And when the sun sets, the light will hit the clouds from below. Again, our planet is a sphere. And now think what happens. The light has a quite long distance to pass through the atmosphere and hits the clouds from below. And ultimately, the clouds get illuminated by red light. And this paints the entire sky red, or at least there where we have clouds obviously. And this happens 10 to 20 minutes before sunrise, or also 10 to 20 minutes after sunset. This is different during the year. In summer it is more 10 minutes and in winter it is more 20. So we need layer clouds, and important is that these are high level or mid level clouds. We don't want to have low level clouds because they would simply block the sunlight. And very important is we need a big gap towards the east for sunrise and towards the west for sunset, so that the sunlight can shine through finally. How big this gap should be depends on the height of the clouds, but I would say, let's hold it simple here, look for a gap of around 200 kilometers or more. A warm front offers usually a guarantee for red sky in the morning, and we had warm front predicted for today. And this means first it brings a big layer of high level clouds moving from the west to the east, and usually they are followed by mid-level clouds as well. It could happen that the first arriving clouds get resolved as well when there is amazingly high pressure at a particular place. And yeah, this is what happened this morning, by the way. But it is not important that there are clouds above you. It is much more important, or only important, that there are clouds above your subject. And today we got an amazing high pressure above our camera position while the warm front knocked on, and this is why most of the clouds got already resolved above us, above the camera position. But on the other hand, this turned into fantastic fog in the midground, so I really don't want to complain. Important is that there were still clouds above the mountain, so it really worked fantastically in there. And by the way, we had layer clouds today. And the reason why it would be more difficult with cumulus clouds, you know, the bigger ones, the higher ones, that is because the area below the cumulus clouds are quite small, so you would get lots of tiny areas with high saturation and high contrast, and this makes it difficult to balance the scene as the red sky lasts just for a few minutes. And there's also a big difference between mid-level and high-level clouds, but before I tell you more about that, I'm really happy if you could give me a thumb up. It helps me, it helps the algorithm, so that other photographers can also find this video better on YouTube. Thank you therefore. Well, now we know that we need sunlight coming from below some minutes before sunrise or after sunset. And we also know that we need layer clouds. But there's something more. There's a big difference between mid-level and high-level clouds, or even two differences, to be honest. First of all, mid-level clouds are not as high up as high-level clouds, obviously, so they are closer to us, and this is why we see more texture and contrast in mid-level clouds than in high-level clouds. So ultimately, mid-level clouds look more dramatic usually. And the high-level clouds lead more to a more solid colorization. And this is important to know for planning your composition. And the second thing is, when you get just high-level clouds, no mid-level clouds, there is a second phase for red sky. And for sunset, this is around an hour after the first phase of red sky. And for sunrise, it works in the opposite way, obviously. So an hour before the red sky, there comes that additional phase of red sky. And in this additional phase, the reds turn even more into pastel colors. And this image here is a good example. It was taken an hour before the main phase of red sky in the morning. The reds are very subtle, and the image expresses this tranquility of that morning mood we had back then. And this image here was taken at the main phase then, an hour later, around 20 minutes before sunrise. So all you have to do is, you have to look for mid-level or high-level layer clouds. And behind your subject, there should be a big gap to the east at sunrise or to the west for sunset. And the only thing we need is a nice subject. And we have to photograph towards the sun. This is important. And for cumulus clouds, it also works when you photograph with the sun in your back, because yeah, they're higher and will catch the sunlight from the side. But for layer clouds, we always plan to photograph towards the sun. And then we should also consider the focal length we are photographing with. The problem is, with a quite short focal length, we don't get all too much of red sky into our frame. It works well for high-level clouds, so the sky is solid colorized and the textures in the clouds are not all too important. And we can use the red sky to accentuate an area in our composition, like I have done with my pano image this morning. I've used 26mm here, by the way. And so it is really important to consider where exactly the sun will come up finally. And if we want to use a longer focal length, we get the sky itself much more sane in the photograph, especially when there are mid-level clouds, so we can support all the drama in the sky with a longer focal length. The only problem is time, so you have to react really quickly to the clouds, to the light and to the colors as well. You know, the phase when the red sky is most beautiful lasts just for a few seconds actually. So really be quick here. And this is also the reason why I had two cameras in setup this morning, by the way. And for red sky prediction, I can recommend to use weather maps instead of weather apps here. It doesn't really work with weather apps, to be honest. You need to determine the types of clouds. You need to find the gap. It is really much easier with weather maps, and it's really quite impossible with apps, to be honest. And you know, weather predictions never come 100% as they were predicted, or at least not all too often. So weather maps help you also massively here, because they also show you different weather scenarios, so that you are really prepared in the end. And if you shouldn't know how to read weather maps, watch this video here. I will explain everything in detail for you. I thank you so much for watching. See you next Saturday. Bye.